Listening to Bad Dog Agility, bringing you training tips, interviews, and news about the great sport of dog agility.
I'm Esteban.
And I'm Sarah, and this is episode 223. Today's podcast is brought to you by 1TDC.com. Dog agility can be hard on your dog's body. Help keep their joints and muscles healthy with 1TDC. 1-tetradecanol complex is a clinically studied blend of unique fatty acid oils that can support your dog's joint health. 1TDC provides healthy inflammatory response from head to tail. All of our listeners will automatically qualify for a great 1TDC special offer by purchasing online at BDA1TDC.com. That's BDA, the number 1, TDC.com.
Today's podcast is also brought to you by HitItBoard.com. HitItBoard.com has the innovative training tools you need for agility. Having problems with the dog walker A-frame? The HitItBoard can fix that. Your dog doesn't like tugging? They'll love the Tug It. Can't move your A-frame around by yourself? The Move It can. Go to HitItBoard.com and use discount code BDA10 to get 10% off your order. That's HitItBoard.com.
Today we are joined by Dr. Brittany Schaezler, friend of the show. Hello, Brittany.
Hello, y'all.
And she is a veterinary doctor, not like a doctor of astrophysics or something.
A DVM. I believe that means Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. Did I get it right?
That
Dr.
is
Schaezler?
correct.
Thank you. Thank you. So she's the real doctor.
That's right.
Yeah, if something happens to your dog, don't find me. Okay, find Dr. Schaezler and others like her.
That's right. And we invited her on the podcast today because we wanted to talk about summertime concerns.
It's summertime.
It's summertime. It is summertime.
We know because the kids are home.
Yeah, that's a big clue. And so there's some things that are more common during the summer, especially down here in Texas. And so we wanted to have Brittany on to discuss some of these concerns.
Sounds good.
All right, we're just going to go through these bang, 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 all right? So it's not super comprehensive, and I do want to put the caveat in there. If you have questions or concerns about your dog's health, go see your vet. Don't be posting weird messages on Facebook, soliciting advice from your Facebook friends. Please don't do that. It makes me angry. Okay.
And official disclaimer that your vet overrides Brittany. Even though she is also a vet, she has not seen your dog and she is not giving you specific advice about your dog.
I cannot diagnose or treat your pet if I have not seen them, but these are just some good general things to be aware of.
Tips and guidelines, perhaps.
Yes.
All right. Let's start off with the number one big concern we definitely have here in Texas. In fact, it's such a serious concern that we alter our training times around this issue, and it is one of heat stroke. So, Brittany, can you tell us a little bit about what heat stroke is and signs and symptoms and what I should be doing if I suspect my dog has it?
So heat stroke is when dogs physically overheat. Dogs cannot sweat like people can. Well, they can sweat through their foot pads, but that's not enough. So they mostly cool themselves by panting. And when you live in a hot, humid environment like, say, Houston, Texas, evaporative cooling, which is what they're doing, does not work very well when it's 90% humidity outside. So that is how they cool themselves off. And if they can't do that, then they are more prone with the same level of activity for their body temperature to go up, and that can cause problems pretty darn quickly. Early signs of heat stroke are going to be like weakness, falling over, collapse, panting heavily, unable to stop panting. Their tongues will get huge, start to curl. You can even see injections, so redness of their eyes and ears. They'll feel warm to the touch. You have to be careful with that because dogs' temperatures are higher than people's normally. And your dog's temperature will go up. If you just go outside for 5 minutes to go potty, their body temperature is going to go up because it's hot outside. So that's a little bit trickier. But you can always check your dog's temperature to get an idea if you are worried that they may have heat stroke.
I think this has happened. Everything you've described, I have seen in our dogs at one time or another, mild heat stroke or the beginnings of it, certainly. And it can be alarming. And I think if you're not used to it, you don't know what to look for, it can kind of sneak up on you because you might be thinking in terms of time. You're like, hey, we've only been working for 3 minutes, but maybe you were doing some very intensive work. Maybe you were getting in 6 or 7 straight weave pull sets there, and now your dog's got your tongue out, and in the wintertime, it wouldn't be a big deal. Or maybe you have just recently moved. You moved down to San Antonio and you used to live in, I don't know, where's someplace really cold? Minnesota. Right? And so maybe it's very, very different. You and your dog aren't used to it. You're not looking for the right signs, or you're out on vacation, etc., etc. Okay, that's heat stroke. Kind of related to that, what about hot concrete? I always worry about that with dogs. I grew up, I was a swimmer. You spend a fair amount of time barefoot, and you quickly learn that pool decks can get very hot. We want to splash water on them. What about our dogs? Are their pads like super thick and tough? Is this something that I have to worry about? Does this happen?
So some dogs actually do have tougher pads. Some dogs are going to have more sensitive pads. So it varies by dog, but it absolutely, in the heat of the summer, the concrete can get so hot that it burns pads. I've seen it. I've seen dogs like literally slough parts of their pads after going for a walk. Yeah, so it hurts really bad. It's not the end of the world, but you really want to avoid walking in the heat of the day. That's basically the solution. Avoid black asphalt because obviously that's going to absorb more heat. Usually if I'm walking my dogs in the summer in Texas, I am walking them after 8 or 8:30 at night, or first thing in the morning before the sun comes up. It usually will cool off. But if you just go outside at noon in July and feel how hot that concrete is, and just realize that if your dog keeps moving, like, they'll be okay. But if you're going to stay in for any length of time, they absolutely can burn their pads.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to websites like weather.com, they'll give you information about when it's dangerous to be out. And we expanded even more so. I guess I'd rather work in the morning than the evening, right? Even if there's a little bit of sun. But in the evening, we wait for shade.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's a huge temperature drop. If you can get the shade from the trees over your field, get the sun behind some clouds, but mostly we're avoiding that midday, and midday for us starts at like 10 a.m.
Yeah,
like no later than 10 a.m. and even 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, that's still too hot, right? So we definitely want to push more towards 7, 8, even if we have to turn on the lights.
And I think with both of these first two, the heat stroke and the hot concrete, you need to know what kind of dog you have, because there are dogs that will let you know when they're in discomfort, and there are dogs that will not until it's basically too late. So, we have dogs that will take one step onto hot concrete and not really want to go out. Like, we'll be at a dog show where you have to walk from the car, and they're, trotting funnily because they're trying to keep their feet off the concrete. And then we have dogs that we don't know that anything's wrong until we see a bloody paw print on the floor.
Yes,
and the same with heat stroke. There are dogs that will go and lie down in the shade. Clear signal that it's too much. And there are dogs that the first thing you see is that they fall over. So know if you have a dog that is all go to the point of not being a self-preserving type of dog.
Right.
Yeah, and you definitely, dogs with shorter noses, the brachycephalics, they have a much shorter tolerance. Dogs can become acclimated to their heat. So there are dogs who live outside in Houston in the summer year round. They're used to it. They are going to be more adapted to that heat. They can still get heat stroke if they overdo it. So if it's a big concern for you, you can try to build up your dog's heat tolerance. But if you go from AC 70 degrees all day and now you want to go work when it's 95 degrees outside, your dog's not going to be able to adjust just like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a big deal, especially here in Texas now, where we've kind of moved from outdoor trialing to almost exclusively indoors. Yeah. So, all right, next topic is thunderstorms. This can kind of be a year-round issue, but here in Texas, we have a lot of thunderstorms. In fact, right now, we're in the middle of huge thunderstorms and flash flooding starting yesterday and probably for the remainder of the week. So, thunder. Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, the main concern with thunder is those dogs that don't like it. And so, knowing if your dog gets anxious, making sure that you're careful when you take them out so that you don't have a dog that normally would be totally fine, but in the presence of thunder might bolt, run away, get out, escape the yard. Yeah, so I think that's the main concern. And watching your dog during those times, I know that there are times where the thunder is in a distance and I almost don't register it. And I'm wondering why my dogs are so whiny, in the room. And then I realize there's this, low grade thunder happening and they're a little anxious. They have a little bit of anxiety. So.
Okay, Dr. Schaezler, do thunder coats work and should people be trying them?
They work for some dogs. They don't work for other dogs. So the jury is out, but it is obviously super safe, easy thing to do to try and see if it works for your dog. I know some people who swear by them. I know people who have tried them and they just didn't do much. There are medication options you can get from your vet. Super safe, mild anti-anxiety, mild sedative. If you feel like your dog needs something like that to be more happy and comfortable during thunderstorms. I had a dog with bad thunderstorm anxiety, and he was completely non-functional. And I'm not talking about to work your dog. I'm just talking about to make your dog a happier pet. Yeah, and have not have that anxiety and fear. In Texas in the summer, it can be every single afternoon. So, it's a nice thing to do, if you notice that in your dog, to help make them a happier dog.
All right. And now, since we are talking about water, let's move on to water intoxication. And here I'm thinking about swimming pools, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But let's start with sprinklers, because it seems like every year I see on Facebook a dog that this happens to. And, the dog almost dies. And people just don't realize the dangers posed by playing in the sprinklers. So what's happening there? Should I not let my dog play in sprinklers? I mean, we were just running the puppies through the sprinklers with the kids. What's going on here with these dogs? What kind of dogs are prone to doing this?
So water intoxication is basically, they literally are overdosing on water. And because of that, their sodium level is dropping to dangerously low levels. And when that happens, you get swelling in the brain. So it only happens with fresh water. So sprinklers, hoses, lakes. So it tends to be super high energy dogs that are going to run themselves into the ground, retrieving the ball out of the water, don't want to get out of the lake, constantly swimming, OCD-like behavior, attacking the hose, attacking the sprinkler, like doing that kind of nonstop. And they are ingesting a ton of water. And, the immediate signs of water intoxication are that stumbling, falling over. So it can initially look a lot like heat stroke, but they've been playing in the water. So you don't usually see heat stroke in dogs that are wet like that. So it can be really dangerous because it can be hard to diagnose quickly, and the treatment is kind of counterintuitive. It's not something that a lot of vets see commonly because it tends to happen in these super high energy performance dogs. So that's not a large portion of our clientele. So you just have to be aware if you have a dog prone to it. If you are suspicious of it at all, you need to go to an emergency vet right away and tell them that you are worried about water intoxication.
It's a really big deal. And so this happens in people as well. It's the exact same thing. People are drinking water. Why would someone drink so much water? It usually had to do with, until people became more aware of this, eating competitions. So now it's no longer a competition, right? Could you eat 60 hot dogs? You can eat 60 hot dogs and not die. But you can't drink, for example, 4 gallons of bottled water and not die, right? And so once they realize that, they're like, hey, we can't have these water drinking contests. And then the other one would be the exact same thing, but in a different context. And it would be hazing mostly for fraternities. They'd be like, here, you have to drink this amount of water in this given amount of time, end up in the ER, sodium level out of whack, and then you get swelling in the head, and it's just a really bad thing.
Yeah, all right. Swelling in the brain sounds bad to me. I mean, I'm no doctor or vet. I'm the one lay person here, but I hear swelling in the brain, and I think that's not something I want. And I did want to point out too that we had an episode specifically about heat stroke and water intoxication. It was episode 8. It was years ago, wow. Also with Dr. Brittany Schaezler. So I think we went into a little bit more depth than we did here on those two topics. So there will be a link to that in the show notes.
Okay, and so related to water, now that we're talking about all things water, swimming pools. So let's say I have a chlorinated pool. I got one of them fancy saltwater pools, and my dog's swimming around in there. Now, that's not fresh water. Do I need to be concerned? What's the deal here?
Or is the chlorine itself, bad?
So basically the levels of salt and chlorine in pools is so low that dogs just cannot drink enough water to really make it an issue. If a dog drank a lot, they might get some GI upset, but it's unlikely to be a problem. More likely to be a problem if they drink a lot of salt water at the ocean because the concentration is much higher. But again, mostly you're going to get GI upset there. Probably the bigger issues with swimming pools is dogs not knowing how to swim and not knowing how to get out of a pool. So, I mean, a dog can drown even if they know how to swim because they can't figure out how to get out of a pool. And then the thing I see actually most commonly is going back to dog pads. The surface around pools is made to be abrasive so that people don't slip when it gets wet. That's basically like your dog running around on sandpaper. So every year I see a lot of dogs come in limping and the owner thinks they've blown their knee or something's terrible. And I pick up their feet and look and their pads are gone because they've been running around the pool, barking at everybody in the pool and going crazy. And they just basically like sandpaper their little pads off. So not a big deal. It just takes a little while to heal. Not good when you have a big agility competition coming up.
Interesting that you mentioned GI upset with respect to the oceans, because we've noticed that when we take our dogs, the border collies, to the ocean, they always have loose stools.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Next water-related topic, drinking puddles. So, we have all this rain, we have this flooding, you got this standing water. And this is such an issue with them going out to the backyard to potty that now we've got bowls out there and we fill it with fresh water from inside or the tap. So, hey, go drink out of this bowl. Don't drink out of this puddle. We're putting things in our yard. Not us, but people will put fertilizer and ant killer and all kinds of stuff in there, and I get bad feelings when I think about my dog drinking out of puddles. Am I right to worry about this?
Yeah.
I think even about mosquitoes, like laying eggs and stuff.
Yeah,
my dog's eating mosquitoes.
That's just protein.
Is that real? What do I need to be worried about here, Dr. Schaezler?
So there certainly are a lot of infectious type diseases and parasites that dogs can get from drinking water outside. So in general, I would not freak out about it, but I would try to avoid it if at all possible. Certainly in our area, since Hurricane Harvey, we've seen a huge increase in Giardia, which is transmissible to people. Dogs get it. They get it by drinking protozoa from contaminated water. It doesn't have to be drinking water. Just stepping in a puddle and then licking their feet later can do it. There's other parasites. There's one called heterobilharzia, which is actually on an uptick as well since Hurricane Harvey. Leptospirosis is a bacteria that is in contaminated water that's in parts of the country, including Texas. So there's a lot of things they can get from the water. Most chemicals you're just never going to know. So, you have no idea what your neighbor is putting in their yards. In theory, it's going to be diluted out enough to not cause an immediate problem. But, it's a good reason to try to keep your dog from not just drinking out of puddles and just letting them do that.
Speaking of puddles, they're often there because we've had flooding. And when we get flooding, it's from heavy rains. And usually the heavy rains come from hurricanes, at least here where we are. And so hurricane season, and I know in other parts of the United States, they worry about tornadoes. In both cases, I think with respect to our dogs and pets, the thing that we really worry about is being separated from them. And so in my mind, I think about microchipping. But as a vet, what do you recommend as far as general hurricane prep specifically related to your pets?
So, the biggest thing is just like you do for your family, you need to have a plan. So when I make a plan, my plan includes our dogs. I know I'm going to need to take 2 cars to fit our dogs and our crates and our stuff. So my husband and I are both going to be driving somewhere if we're evacuating. We're never going to leave the dogs behind. Ever since Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, where people thought it wasn't a big deal, I refused to leave pets behind. So when I had a cat, I evacuated to North Houston and Hurricane Ike and with the cat, which was an adventure, along with the dogs. Whereas before that, I probably would have been like, oh, he's got food and water, it'll be fine. So you need to make sure you're taking your pet somewhere where they're going to have pet-friendly accommodations, whether that's with a friend or family, hotel. I believe they actually changed the laws that shelters have to have somewhere for pets now, but you can't quote me on that. I really believe that after Katrina, that was a big reason people did not take their pets with them, and that they changed the federal laws to allow for that.
Or people would refuse to leave because they didn't want to leave their pets, and then that put them at danger.
Right. So you just need to have a plan. Microchipping is great because, a collar, a tag can come off. Microchips are going to be there, but it's not visible. So I like both. I like to have a tag with my phone number on it. I also like to have a microchip as a permanent identification. Obviously, food and water for your dog. A crate to contain them, because you don't know, like, maybe you're going to be staying in a hotel that doesn't normally allow dogs, but they are because of the hurricane, but they want them contained.
Exactly.
So you really don't want to be throwing 4 dogs in the back seat and hoping everything goes okay.
Exactly. All right. Great tip there. Hurricane season just getting started here in the Gulf Coast. Next up, we have thorns in the paws. So these thorns, I often think of them as kind of a summer thing when it gets dry, and then these thorns they get dry and hard, and they're not soft and green and bendy, and then they go right into our dog's paws, and then the paws swell up, and then they can't do agility. So what's the deal with that?
So we get stickers, certainly, that dry out, and they're going to generally occur in clusters. If your dog was walking fine and all of a sudden they stop and are holding up one paw or don't want to move, a lot of time that's because they got a sticker. I know when I find those in my dogs, usually you're finding a bunch, and you just have to, and they stick you too, and you have to get them all out. If a little piece got stuck in there, you certainly could get a little bit of a foreign body reaction or some swelling or a little local infection. So anytime your dog is like trotting along, like nothing's happening through some kind of grass or woods, and just stop dead, or suddenly they're like non-weight bearing lame, a lot of times something like a sticker will do that. I know parts of the country have foxtails, which are stickers on steroids.
Yeah, I was really paranoid about that.
I was super scared.
We went to California for tryouts one year. This is several years ago, and we took Gitchy. So Gitchy's not my dog, right? We co-owned her, and to be responsible for her health, it's a big deal. I do not take chances with this dog. And they had them, and they're right there in the parking lot. Like, you're standing next to them. Like, I get out of the car, and it's like right next to me in the little, the parking divider island thing. Like, they're all over the place. I'm like, how can we possibly have a dog trial here? What are these people thinking? I remember being very paranoid about it.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. All right, next one we have is stings. So bee, wasp stings. Actually, anything, I guess, that would give the dog a swollen face. And we have personal experience with this one. There will probably be a picture on the show notes page. I took my dogs out to the bathroom, and as I was calling them in, I looked at Venture and I said, he kind of looks funny. And so I kind of grabbed his face and turned it toward me, and holy smokes, it was like double-sized snout. It was completely swollen up, and then within minutes, it was even worse. And so I rushed him over to Brittany, who fixed him right up after taking him to the back and showing everybody because he was so adorable. I heard her say, look at him, and I heard everybody go, oh, poor baby.
So yeah, bees and wasps cause local swelling, like a local allergic reaction. I've seen it in dogs that have eaten a bee. But they like to shove their nose, dogs like to shove their nose in places where there can be bees and wasps. So if they get stung on their face, that's where the local swelling is going to be. Generally, it's relatively mild. You don't want to ignore it because any swelling on the face could potentially affect their airway. And if your dog had a more severe allergic reaction, they could have more systemic issues. But it's never wrong. Just get your dog to the vet right away. They're going to do antihistamines. They may do a short-acting steroid, but that'll bring down that swelling. But we certainly see that a lot more in the summer than, in the winter months.
And as agility people, I know that I have seen wasps fly out of my jumps.
Yes. Oh, we had,
because
we've had nests in the
they like to nest under my dog walk.
And
So
it's
I think
a thing in Texas at least.
Yeah. And so I think as agility people, we actually are creating an environment conducive to this.
All right. And now we're going to wrap up with a bunch of different animals, the different species. So your dog is likely to have encounters with members of different species. And let's start with one of the more common ones. Everybody imagine it in your head. Guess the animal that I'm going to start with. And you're all wrong. It's cats. Okay? We're starting with cats. Okay. So your dog gets into it with a cat that they don't know. Scratch, a bite. How do we proceed here as the owner when we're reasonably sure what happened? We saw what happened.
So if you know your dog has been bitten by a cat, I certainly recommend taking them to the vet to get it clipped and cleaned up and make sure it's not there's not any local issues. Cat mouths are very, very nasty, so they're going to cause an infection. So depending on how deep it is, they may or may not need. It's unlikely they'll need sutures or anything like that. But I can't think of a time where I've seen a dog get bit by a cat that I did not want to put them on antibiotics, at least for a little while to make sure, because usually if I don't, it's going to get infected. And that's true for most animal bites. Like, mouths are dirty things, and wild animals do not brush their teeth. So, you really worry about secondary infection from any kind of a bite.
Absolutely. Same thing applies to humans as well. If you take a bite from a cat, it's likely to be a puncture, right? So it's going to be deep, and that bacteria that is there is going to be injected deep into your body. And if it's your hand in particular, it's a really big deal. Before it even starts swelling, you need to get in. Don't wait. Don't make an appointment for the next day. You need to get to an emergency room. You need to start antibiotics immediately. This once happened to me while I was at work. I got a puncture wound, and I went to clinic, and then before I hit lunch, my hand was like swollen and red, and I had to go see the preceptor there, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna see you right now, put you in as a patient, and get you some antibiotics and take care of that. Okay, next animal. And I want to do these in tandem because I don't know that I know the difference between these two animals.
How do you not know the difference?
Okay,
it's possum and raccoon. Now,
right.
I think most people listening could probably...
Which one's the trash panda?
Raccoons.
Okay.
Ranger Rick. Yeah, Ranger Rick.
They have the bandana mask on their face.
Okay, yeah. I don't know who Ranger Rick is. I assume Ranger Rick was a man, but you're telling me that
Rocket
Ranger
the raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay, Rocket is a genetic experiment. He's not actually a raccoon. When you want to insult Rocket, then you call him a raccoon. But I'm gonna let that slide. Okay.
And
so
possums, look, they're like huge rats almost.
So what do we have in the backyard that's always walking on our fence? And
possums.
Okay, so we have possums.
We have possums.
And possums are the ones that play dead.
Yes, they play possum. As a matter of fact.
Oh, okay. All right. Nice. All right. I'm learning. I'm as you can tell, I'm more of a city boy.
So raccoons are more likely to get in a fight with a dog than a possum is. Possums play possum. So when they are threatened, they tend to play dead. I cannot tell you the number of times I've had people tell me a story about how their dog killed a possum and brought them the possum, and they got them to drop it and get it out of their mouth, and 5 seconds later the possum jumps up and runs away. So generally speaking, possums are not super aggressive, but they can carry... Actually, I just had this pop up in my Facebook memories. A baby possum on my back porch that was not acting right, like stumbling around. They can carry diseases that dogs can catch. Ooh. So you don't want your dog hanging out with possums. If your dog catches a healthy possum, it's unlikely they're going to catch anything from it. There's nothing you can do about it except to watch them and watch for any signs. But if a possum does get threatened, they do have ginormous teeth. So they could cause those deep puncture wounds as well if your dog did get bit by a possum. Raccoons like to get into the trash, hence the trash panda. And so they can get very acclimated to people and dogs, so they can be more aggressive because of that. They're less likely to run off. Whereas a lot of wild animals are just, they see a dog coming and they go the other way.
Do we have raccoons in Texas?
Yes.
I'm sure we do, but I haven't seen any around here. I think probably when you're closer to like the woods.
They are in this area. Like I've seen them on the side of the road. But they're not, we don't have, there are some neighborhoods where there's tons of them. Because they live in the trash cans and stuff, but not in them, but they feed in the trash cans, so they have no reason to leave. But yes, not as common as possums for us, for sure.
Okay, interesting. All right. Speaking of bites, I think something that a lot of people worry about, and we worry about here in Texas, and we've had some bad ones, are snake bites, right? So these snakes, the snakes are crazy. I mean, they will just lay there and dogs will step right over them. And to me, having observed our dogs over many years and several interactions with snakes, it appears that sometimes they don't know the snakes are there. Like they're unable to smell them.
They don't have a strong smell.
Right?
Yeah, they don't have a strong smell. Most snakes are biting out of defense. So they're not, like, rattlesnakes are going to warn them, but like a water moccasin.
That's the scary one. Oh, so scary.
They are. And they have not all snakes, but rattlesnakes, water moccasins, toxic snakes that live in your area are going to envenomate. The problem is that every snake's different. Every snake's venom is different. Every dog is going to have a different response. So if you know your dog gets bit by a snake, first thing to do is try to get a picture of the snake. Because it is critical for trying to figure out how big a deal it is, for how much we need to worry about your dog. Do we need to be rushing your dog to the specialty place, or can we just clean it up, and watch it? Sure. Rattlesnakes are bad. They make anti-venom, just like they use for people, that can help. But you have to do it right away. It's really expensive. You really want to know that that's what you need. And you usually are not going to get that at your veterinarian unless your vet sees a lot of snake bites, because it's really expensive and it's hard to keep in stock for the average vet that may see one snake bite a year. So I know if the last snake bite I saw was a dog who got bit on the neck by a water moccasin, they actually saw it, killed the snake, and brought it in with them.
Oh, God.
And they were like, oh, wait, do you want to see it? And I was like, no. But I did, and got it out and posted pictures to Facebook, because there's snake people I know on Facebook, and said, hey, can someone tell me what this is? And it was a baby water moccasin. And I knew then to tell them, you need anti-venom, you need to go to Gulf Coast right away, one of the big specialty hospitals. And they went and spent a lot of money, and the dog did just fine. If you can't do anti-venom or it's not available, that doesn't mean your dog will not do fine, but you just don't know, because we don't get a crystal ball when we graduate. So snakes are bad news. You're right. A lot of dogs will walk right over them, never know that they're there. It's really only when they step on them by accident, or in the case of a lot of terriers, they hear them, they see them, they go after them because they're a terrier. That's what they're bred to do. So this dog was a terrier, bit on the face. That's the number one thing I see is terriers that have been bit on the face by a snake. So if your dog gets bit by a snake, you want to take them in as fast as you humanly can to try to try to identify the snake so that you know what you need to do.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right. And we're going to wrap up with dogs that eat other animals. Okay, so how many times have you been on a trail or even at your house and your dog brings some dead body to your door? Parts of the body are missing. It's a mouse. It's a rat. Commonly with these golden retrievers here in Texas, it's going to be a rabbit. Right? And
or a bird that might have already been dead. So gosh, you're giving me the heebie-jeebies.
So, there's probably been a little bit of some sampling, right? So, Brittany, is this something that I have to worry about with my dog? Are they going to catch some weird disease and die? What should I be doing? Should I be worried? Do I need to take him to the vet?
So, it's pretty common for it to happen. It's pretty uncommon for it to cause an issue. Yes, there are some parasites they can get, some tapeworms from eating rabbits. There's some other tapeworms they can get from eating crawfish. So there,
you would know.
Only in the Gulf Coast do dogs get this worm from eating crawfish. So there are some different things that they can get from eating a dead animal or killing an animal and eating it. Not usually anything that's terrible or life-threatening, and there's not really a lot you're going to do immediately if you catch your dog doing it other than watch and see. So it happens a lot. If you think about the number of dogs who are not pampered agility dogs in our homes that are out on farms eating whatever, generally dogs are going to do okay. They were, they're descended distantly from wolves. So, in some respects, their bodies are made to handle that type of thing. But just watching for any visible parasites later on down the line, weeks to months down the line, any worms you see in their stool, any weight loss of appetite, any other GI signs would be what I would watch for.
All righty. Well, we got to the end of our summertime list, and thank you very much to Dr. Brittany Schaezler for joining us today.
I am happy to be here.
And that's it for today's podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, 1TDC.com, hititboard.com, and also NTI Global. Tread tunnels. Launched in 2017, NTI Global Tread tunnels are where it's at. Non-slip tread grip. They're available in 4 and 6-inch pitch. With an embossed textured surface on the inside of the tunnel, it's designed for low-slip tread. Visit shop.ntiglobal.com for the widest selection of dog agility tunnels for both competition and backyard training. Known for free shipping, more options, high-quality products, and low prices, NTI Global has got you covered. They also offer tamer and anchor weight bags along with a full line of accessories and agility storage solutions. Need your agility gear in a hurry? Don't forget to check the in-stock selection. Visit shop.ntiglobal.com and use promo code TREAD2019TUNNEL1, that's the number 1, for 5% savings off today. Promo code good through June 30th, 2019. Happy training!